Good morning, Trinidad and Tobago. My name is Michelle Davis, and I'm the Deputy Party Organizer for the Progressive Empowerment Party. I am your guest host today, filling in for Felicia. Felicia apologizes. She had an emergency to attend to today. So uh, I'm joined by Hadassah Charles McLeod, who's our co-chair of our Women's Arm and also our online membership coordinator. Welcome, Hadassah.
Thank you, Michelle. How are you?
Good, and how are you? How are things on your side?
Yeah, well, everybody know it's crazy out here. Thankfully, I am not in any like imminent danger. There haven't been any protests in this part of Jersey. I'm just looking on at the news and, of course, trying to stay inside and, of course, still practice social distancing because, as far as I know, that is not over.
Well, Hadassah, I'm looking forward to welcoming you home. The last time we spoke and met in person was a few months ago, and I've not had the privilege of working with you since. And speaking of home, Hadassah, I believe this next topic will really uh, pique your interest. The minister is talking about charging our
Mm,
citizens that are currently abroad for a quarantine stay, as this initiative has been suggested or will be implemented in Jamaica. So the question remains, should we charge our citizens to come home? And the second question, Hadassah, is where did all the money go?
Oh wow, Michelle. Yeah, you start with a bang. Okay, so I have to say first of all that I'm so excited to be on with you today because I keep asking when am I going to get to be on with Michelle? When I'm going to be on with Michelle? And while I am so sad that Felicia is not here today, I am so
Yes.
excited because I get you all to myself. So
Oh,
yay.
thank you.
But back to the topic of the day. Should we charge? The thing about it is Trinidad and Tobago like to be what's the word, conveniently sovereign, right? When it came to the Rio Treaty, we were sovereign. Now all of a sudden we want to do what Jamaica is doing.
Right.
I if I did not know that the government had drawn down so much money from the HSF, and if I didn't know of the amount of money that we had borrowed uh, to help us through the COVID-19 crisis, then I would say, by all means, um, charge the citizens, right? But to date, and I think we were talking about this before the show started, only about $1 billion have been accounted for. So where is the other $19 billion? And I think it is really, really. I seriously, I think it is really cruel, um, especially in a time like this when, of course, people's earning capabilities were stripped away. Not, of course, not intentionally, but people didn't have the ability to earn an income and stuff like that. And all these people want to do is exercise their rights as citizens to be able to come home. So I think I'm leaning more towards no, because, and I'm still fixated on this, where did all the money go, right? How many people have gotten grants up to this point? We can't say.
Right. I'm agreeing with you 100%. If it wasn't for the money that was borrowed, that was taken from the HSF, you would have considered that and you would have thought of that as reasonable. But so far, we
Mm-hmm.
have heard figures of 18 to 20 billion TT dollars that the government currently has access to and has been supposedly spending on COVID 19. But when we look at the figures that have been released so far, of the close to $1 billion, $800 million, Hadassah, has been expedited to VAT refunds for businesses. This is not
Mm-hmm.
inclusive of businesses, of citizens. This is inclusive of a sum of 800 million that has been dispersed to businesses that has nothing to do with COVID-19 relief. We were told initially the HSF uh, withdrawal would be for COVID-19 initiatives, would be to help the country in dealing with this crisis, because we did anticipate a heavy hit on the health sector. Right. The
Yes.
last figure I had on that, Hadassah, was literally of the $934 million, only $55 million has been spent on the health sector. So the question
Oh wow.
remains, before you have the audacity to say, or even think of charging the citizens that are coming home, the audacity is, where is the rest of the money? Right? Because VAT refunds is not a COVID-19 relief. It is not part of the initiative, and should not be considered in the dispersal of funds. Right? This is 2017, 2018 refunds we are referring to. That is part of a normal business operation. So the citizens need to start thinking, where did this money go? Right? And now and as you indicated, what about the crew members that are stuck on board the ships, the offshore workers that are stuck on the offshore platforms that are not working? They are not working. How do you tell them to pay when they themselves have been gravely impacted financially with this situation, right? How do we tell? How do I tell, you, Hadassah, okay, you don't have any money, but I'm going to charge you this mandatory 14-day quarantine? How would you deal with that?
It's like I said, it is very cruel. And I want to know how it is that $800 million in VAT refunds, how come that took priority over citizens who still up to this point have not received a rent grant or a $1,500 grant? And then on top of that, you want to come and say, well, when you come back home, you have to you have to pay for your quarantine. And like I said, it's cruel. We have the example of the energy workers who are in Mexico, and they are pleading
Yes.
with the government to come home. First of all, you shouldn't have to plead to come back to your own country. But they are saying, we want to come home, and they are having to state a case. They are saying, well, we are tax-paying citizens, and we have also contributed to the revenue of the country because we work in the energy sector. And even so, they're being denied. And on top of that, now they're being told, well, you might have to pay everything. I always feel there's so much cruelty in the way that the government treats with citizens. They don't treat to like if they are human beings that should be respected and should have dignity. It's always very, very, very cruel, and I can't get over it. I really, really can't get over it.
It is, Hadassah. And when you look at it, I mean, we always refer to Trinidad in terms of their governance. It's always a kind of copycat scenario. Why are we looking at what Jamaica is doing? Their financial situation might be different. Their initiatives and how they have spent their money. And actually, they have probably, I think, over double the amount of cases. I think actually quadruple. They're in the 400s,
Yes.
and we're not, right?
Yes.
So we have one active COVID case, right? We're spending $145,000 we have signed an agreement for 3 months to rent a facility in Sandy Grande. We spent $1 million
Yes.
to upgrade the sporting center where we're currently facilitating the quarantine measures. But currently, our system has not been overburdened. If our system was overburdened, I would have considered that, okay, understandable. We've been hit by thousands of cases. But we have been dealing with a very minimal amount from a global standpoint of COVID-19 cases. We currently only have one active case. So why would that even be considered? That should not, and as you indicated, it is cruelty because on top of the mental pressure that everyone is going through, they're pleading to come home. These offshore workers have indicated that their company has a private jet charter to bring them home, that
Yes,
they have
to bring them
applied,
home.
correct, that they have applied 90 days, almost 90 days ago, saying we have a private jet. We are offshore. We are not subjected to the public. And we're not even considering that, as you said. Where's our heart as a government?
Yeah, because I was reading in the article that they said that they have been practicing just by virtue of the industry that they're in, the health and security environment laws.
Right,
So they
yes.
have all they are practicing social distancing. They're not in contact with each other and everything, and they're willing to be quarantined. But let me ask you something, Michelle. So let's try to be the devil's advocate, right? What are they paying for? So if I were to come home, what am I paying for? Is it that I'm paying for a test or they're paying to house me? Because I am thinking that citizens should be allowed to be quarantined at their own homes. They should be tested, but then they should be quarantined at home. I really don't see the need for the government themselves to undertake that burden unless I am missing something.
Right, and that is a good question because I thought of that too. I thought, okay, what about mandatory quarantine at home? But we are already paying the facilities already. We have already embarked on that 3-month initiative for these various facilities in terms of upgrading. But in the article, Hadassah, what was indicated, what was exactly what you said? Guess what they're charging them for? The consumables, basically to eat. That's what that's really how low we've gone. And we have seen pictures of what the quarantine persons are eating. It is not 5-star meals. We have seen basic tuna sandwiches, basic food. We have seen pictures of it. The public has seen pictures. So we're not talking an amount that is going to be astronomical in feeding these persons. But agreed, if we did not have the facilities and if that is the cost, but they're not saying that's the cost because they've already budgeted for that. They've already said, okay, these facilities will be available. We've upgraded them. We've spent X, Y, Z. But now we're saying, okay, Hadassah, you come back and I'm going to charge you basically for your meals. I guess if there is an electricity bill related to the compound, I guess you're part of that. I mean, that is how much they're looking at this situation and considering when in fact it should not be of any consideration right now. Unless we are
Hmm.
bringing home by the thousands, understood, but we have yet, and as you know, Hadassah, we have yet to even touch the iceberg of the amount of citizens that want to come home. People are
Yeah.
pleading, begging, and we have yet. And what's note? I wanted to mention something while we were saying that. What's important to note about those members that are offshore? They have a private charter. But did you notice last week we allowed a private jet to come in? We allowed another private jet to come in the week before, a private air ambulance. So what is the difference between these offshore workers? And yes, there are 60 of them. We understand the health requirements. We understand, but there is also, they need to be tested. We understand that. They need to be quarantined. But what is the difference? And that's what we're facing right now, Hadassah. Why are they differentiating between the citizens that can come home and the ones that cannot?
Well, we know it's about who is who, but then people get really upset when we say that Trinidad and Tobago is a banana republic because
Mhm.
we look at the response of other countries when the crisis hit. Canada made sure that they sent a chartered flight to get their citizens home, and so did the UK. All right.
Right.
So, what is different from us, and what is wrong with people wanting to be home in their own country? And the amount of money that they have drawn on from the HSF, everybody should have been able to access a grant. Everybody who is in quarantine should be eating like kings and queens. But we're not even asking for that. We're just asking for the basics, and the government refuses to do the basics. And that is why I keep saying, and I keep harping on the fact that it's very cruel, because you have to beg for everything. You have to beg to come home to your country. You have to beg to get a grant. Everything requires you to beg or to suffer and stand in long lines and hope and pray and everything.
It does. And yesterday, day before, I think was the day before, 120 Britons left Trinidad and Tobago. I'm not sure if it's Tobago or Trinidad. The government sent a plane, but that plane came over empty. So Felicia and I mentioned, why are we not coordinating with the respective governments
Yes,
and
bring
in terms
people
of
in
coordination?
on
So
the
that
same
plane came
flights.
over empty.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yes.
So it came over empty and then it left with 100. So why didn't we fill that plane with citizens from the UK,
Yeah.
Trinidad citizens that want to come home? And why didn't we coordinate those efforts? It would have been a win-win situation for both governments, for the UK and of Trinidad. But we're not doing that. Empty planes are hitting Trinidad and taking back citizens. That has been done for Canada so far. I think this is the second flight for the UK, and I believe this is the second journey. Last week or the last week, I believe, was for Canada. So why aren't we making those coordinated efforts? Why aren't we not being proactive in bringing our citizens back home? In a stagnant, we understand the order. We know 10,000 cannot come back. But until we start to make a fair assessment, as you have said, until the public starts to see a fair assessment of who is being brought back home, we will continue to harp on this situation.
Proactive, Michelle. You are using words that are not synonymous with this present administration. Don't do that. Right, but I agree with you. I agree with you. We can stagger the returns. We can bring people home in batches so that it doesn't have to overburden the health system. It doesn't have to overburden the quarantine facilities. It doesn't have to overburden anybody. But
Right.
I always believe that at the core, the government's intention is not to help people. I always believe that. Because I'm thinking back, I'm saying, I can't remember the last time that I heard Mr. Rowley get up and say something revolutionary like, we are going to do this because this will help people do this. For example, we're going to make food more affordable so that single parents could do this. Or we are going to, I don't know, I can't think of anything right now, but
Right.
I can never think of initiatives that at the core is to help people. To me, the only people who are helped by this government are those who already have money and who have already been helped.
I
Correct me
agree
if
with
I'm
you
wrong.
100%. It is until we were talking prior to, the show starting, that until you have lived here and you witness the unjust actions of who is benefiting from governance, you really would not understand what the citizens are going through in this country. There is this, there's the elite seem to prosper, and the average man continues, as Hadassah indicated, to suffer. Everything is an obstacle. And I was mentioning to Hadassah, went to do my some paperwork in the U.S. and literally went to a government agency. and it took 5 minutes of waiting time and processing time. I mean, I was, to say I was shocked was an understatement. We were talking about just going to the bank, how long and tedious the process is here in Trinidad. And we don't have governance that is proactive with the citizens, for the citizens, and have a feel for what the citizens are going through on a daily, day-to-day basis. But Adasa, that leaves us to our next topic, which is right now we're seeing every day in the paper all of these new candidates, and they're for the same parties. What's your take on that? I have a lot to say on that.
Um, I honestly believe that the introduction of PEP to the political landscape has really changed the game. This is not just me saying that because I am a pepper. I am saying it because it is true. I think this election will be very unique because it will be the first time that you will hear parties talking more about policy and less
Mm.
about bacchanal because Philip has raised the bar. And I think all the turmoil that we are witnessing in terms of the PNM not being able to settle on candidates and who to place where, and they're not satisfied with this one, and they're screening and screening and screening and screening. I don't know if it's a movie or something.
Yes.
I think it is because there is a third option and they know that they have to come good. That is my personal opinion. What do
Well,
you think?
that is not even, that is a well thought out angle because I agree with you 100%. I believe the Progressive Empowerment Party has just brought another level to politics in Trinidad and Tobago. And you know why I brought up this topic? Because let's give the comparison or the analogy of during Christmas we like to decorate our home, so we fill our home with decorations and new items, but does the structure of the house change? No, right? And
No.
this is the point we're trying to make. The structure of the house does not change. It has new items and it has the Christmas tree and it looks nice and clean, but these new candidates will not bring anything new to these two parties. And that is something the public needs to know. And as you have indicated, the Progressive Empowerment Party has put a new spin on politics. We are not talking bacchanal politics. We are talking, what do you have to bring to the table? We are seeing they are picking popular faces, but are these popular faces, what change are they possibly going to bring to Trinidad, Hadassah? What do you think about that with these
Exactly.
new faces?
I I don't want to judge anybody and say, well, because you're a public figure or because you're a celebrity, it means that you may not have a heart for politics or that you have good intentions. But the current parties, they are showing their hand. It has been done before. All right, and it's nothing new. This is what they do to try to sway the youth or to pull votes. um and I honestly believe it doesn't matter who your candidates are, if at the core your intention is not to root out corruption and to change the way that the country works. If you're not talking about closing the borders, if you're not talking about policies that actually affect people's lives on the ground, then you're actually not serious. You're really, really not
Ex-
serious. And I don't care who you
exactly.
come with. You can come with Santa Claus. Not impressed.
Agreed, agreed. And we have yet to see, and the reason why we're talking about that this morning, because this is all over the newspapers, these candidates and screening, as Hadassah indicated, as though it's a movie, as though they're going up for the the primary role. But we are talking about this because this is intentionally meant to deceive the public as to there's a new new face to our party when at the core we have yet to see a policy, we have yet to see a procedure, we have yet to see their indications of improving the deficiencies of this country, improving what the average citizen goes and experiences every day. I saw a quote yesterday, 50,000 jobs. Well, how do you intend to create 50,000 jobs? What is the plan? There's a difference between saying and doing. And we've heard these stories before. At the Progressive Empowerment Party, yesterday we had a walkabout in San Fernando East and West, and we walked with our policies. We walked with our
Yeah.
knowledge to say how we are going to change this country. We didn't walk saying vote for us. We walked saying here are our policies. Have a look if you are not familiar with us and see these are initiatives to change the country for the better. So when the progressive empowerment says vote country, that is what we are about. Voting country, because the country, I'm sure Adessa will agree with me, is on a nosedive. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Indeed. If we
It,
haven't
it,
dove already, what is the sense of trying to use?
right, right.
Indeed.
Yeah.
If we haven't
We,
crashed and burned already.
Right. I mean, you look at the debt we're in. You look at the debt, and you look at the a country of a once oil-rich nation that have experienced
Yeah.
two oil booms under the current administration, and you ask yourself, okay, what is going to change? Having, bringing all these candidates from both sides, both parties, and what is going to change for the citizens? It's not about giving you a CPEP job and your little life. Okay, this is about the country and what the country needs to move forward. So that's the reason I wanted to touch on it, because it's so frustrating to see the manipulation in the newspapers of all these candidates as though it's a new party. And it's not. It's the same beast that has destroyed Trinidad and Tobago. As you said, if we haven't, we're almost at the bottom. We're almost at the bottom. And it's going to take a rescue mission to get us out of the hole that this current and previous administration has really dealt us into. We are sinking, and until you understand our dollar has no value. You look at Barbados, you look at other countries, you look at even the Eastern Caribbean money is 2 to 1, and here in Trinidad
Yeah.
we are. I mean, tell me what you think about the value of our money, Hadessa, because it drives me crazy.
Oh, you mean our monopoly money?
The one with the pretty colors, Hadessa.
Michelle, like you were saying, that people cannot be fooled by political baiting, which is what it is. If you put pearls and lipstick on a pig, it is still a pig. So I really, really hope that Trinidadians would take heed and they will start to pay attention and not fall for these same old tricks and really start to want and desire, because that is that is what happens. And I can say that was my personal experience. I started to feel so dissatisfied with everything, and my mom started to say, "Girl, you're just getting like an old lady and you're quarreling about everything," you know. But I I could tell everybody I used to work for an airline, so I had travel privileges, and I was fortunate enough that I was able to travel a lot. So, and I would
Mm,
always say that as soon as I touched down in Trinidad, I would feel the the I don't know, the dysfunction and the incompetency is almost something that you could feel in the air, right? And it's
Yeah.
very stifling. And I for myself, I wanted better. I wanted when I go to the banks that I didn't have to make sure that my phone was fully charged and had a snack in my purse because I know I had to stand up in the lines long. I wanted better. I wanted that when I go to that I didn't have to actually leave my house to pay a bill, that I could do it online. I just wanted better. I wanted to be able to get credit at the banks to start a business, and just simple things that people need to live. I wanted to be able to comfortably afford food when I go to the grocery, and if I want to buy a home, that I could do that. The way that is set up now, if you're a single person, you can't think about owning a home unless you're earning $25,000 a month on your own. So
Right.
I was starting to feel like the country was stifling, and I wanted more and I wanted better. And that's what I'm appealing to Trinidad and Trinbagonians. You have to start to want better. You have to start to see the deficiencies in your country, and it's not about criticizing it, but this demanding more and demanding better. In 2020, you should have water in your taps, at least basics. In
Yeah.
2020, you should have roads, and you should have a reliable postal service, and you should get good service at the bank, and you should not be made to feel like when you go to the bank, they're doing you a favor. Anyway, I think I was
Wow,
ranting enough.
you hit it. You said something that really touched up. I mean, I've wanted to say that for years. When you arrive in Trinidad, the minute that plane lands and opens that door, and you go into the immigration terminal, you feel a sense of dysfunctionality. The you are
Yeah,
met
the
immediately with
incompetence,
hostility,
everything. Yes, you
incompetence.
feel it.
You feel it. The minute you literally walk off that plane, you feel you are met with animosity. You are met, what are you here? I've been asked, what are you here for? I mean, with such
Wow.
hostility. The last time I entered, went to Guyana for work, and just was there for 3 days. And when I came back, I went through the line. I know not to say anything at any more, Hadassah. I just say good morning, good afternoon, and I just hand my passport. So handed my passport, and I really was not paying attention because I was just trying to be obedient. So I reached to the other, and he
Yeah.
goes, "This is not stamped. This is not stamped. Go back." And what do I have to do with the stamp? You just saw me come out the line. So I went and stood at the side and said, "Well, what you here for? What happened? What happened?" This is how you're met by the immigration. This is the first impression someone has of
Yeah.
our country. I mean, and it is so sad, and exactly right what you are saying. What we are experiencing day to day, the animosity, the unfriendliness. We are an angry nation. And why are we angry when
Yeah.
it comes to customer service? Why don't we value customer service? We are met with such hostility. You go to the bank, it's basically, why are you here? You go to a government ministry office, why are you here? And that's how we continue to be met. And that's why we bring up, different faces aren't going to change that unless you have systems to correct those deficiencies. Unless you have
Yes.
persons and systems and procedures in place that says, you know what, we are, as a ministry, we demand of our employees to be proactive in customer service. You and I have worked in the
Yeah.
US, so we know that is a number one requirement. You can work at any organization in the US. If you do not practice good customer service, you will be fired on the spot.
Yeah, well, always ask myself, like the companies in Trinidad, like Digicel, for example, or B Mobile, or any of these companies that actually have a call center and you have to call in,
Right.
right? And you still get the same terrible service on the phone with attitudes and whatnot. And I said, I know when I worked, they really monitor and
Yeah,
record those calls, and you're
yeah,
evaluated on it, and you can
yes.
be fired for not being friendly, for not being helpful, for not probing, for not going the extra mile. You can be fired for reaching late, and etc. 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 And I'm like, why it is we are not getting it, just the basics. But I honestly believe, Michelle, that people are very unhappy. We want, it's kind of hard to expect, I don't know, smiles and professionalism and great service from people who are happy or unhappy, and they are oppressed and they are struggling to make ends meet and they can't afford to buy a home. And if they miss the bus, they don't know when the next bus come in, and it's just so much things that people are dealing with. I remember when we used to be a happier country, but we are not that anymore. And I really believe it's because
No.
just people just under pressure. Everybody under pressure, right? And nobody have time for courtesies anymore.
I agree. And that is so, I have been coming here as a child. I've spent most half of my life here. Soon as school was over in the US, my mom would ship me down to my grandmother, and I would be here 3 to 4 months for vacations. I mean, I was always here, and I've lived here half my adult life. And I agree. We were once a happier nation. I so agree with that because I remember relating my family going to England for a trip, and I said, no, send me home by Ma. I want to go to Trinidad because the happiness and the joy I would experience here is memories to this day I cherish. The how friendly the country was. There was no racism. There was not this anger that you currently feel. And I agree with you. And the citizens need to understand the frustration that you are feeling in your daily life is due to lack of proper governance. Not knowing that when you
Yes.
go home, you want to wash clothes and you don't know there's water, that is impacting you. Not knowing that you might not get paid because the ministry is late in their payments. Not knowing that
Hmm.
you can afford to cook a proper meal on Sunday. This is all related to governance. If our exchange rate wasn't so high, our cost of living would not be so high. That is directly determined by governments, right? So this cost of living, when you think there's things go up and we kind of take it as for is, no, that is proper governance. The Eastern Caribbean countries, these small countries as St. Vincent, the St. Martin, these smaller countries, less wealthier than Trinidad, have a 2-to-1 ratio. $2 to $3 per US dollar. But yet we are sinking. That frustration you are feeling when you can't get a taxi, like you said. Is the bus going to turn up? Am I going to get held up? I mean, yesterday I will
Yeah.
relate to you that was we had just finished the walkabout. So we were going home, but we saw a little parlor that, because we needed water and not a lot of places are open. So we were extremely thirsty. So we stopped, but in stopping, I think I just didn't think. So I stopped. Someone was in the car and I left my door ajar. In that 30 seconds that I took to just walk around the car, a car with two men pulled up literally parallel to my car.
Oh
And my
wow.
first immediate action was that we were being held up. So I turned around because he had the door. You wouldn't have been able to get into the car. So I thought he was going to come out
Yeah.
and jump in. But imagine that was the first, I thought we are being held up. So I turned around thinking maybe he has a gun. So Michelle just moved very, cautiously. And he just wanted to ask a question to the parlor lady, do they sell something? But
Oh
the reason
wow.
I brought that example, I was scared out. I mean, speechless. Like I must have turned white
Yeah.
because I really thought we were being held up. And I continued. I froze in my position, Hadassah. It was so scary because I was scared for the young lady that was in the car. That they were
Yes.
so I just answered him. I asked the question what he wanted to know if they were selling, and they said no, they don't. I said no, they don't, and I tried to be as nice as possible. The way he pulled off was as though he changed his mind because he was moving
Wow.
very slow. So I don't know what was about to happen to there, but what the reason I bring up that is how we are living in Trinidad. I thought my life and that girl's life was going to be taken. I thought the car was going to be hijacked. I thought that she was going to be in the car. And all I could do was just use my friendliness and look him directly in the eye to see, for him to relate to me. I don't know what he came for, but this is what we are feeling in Trinidad. And this is governance. Where are these guns coming from? Ask yourself this, citizens. Where are these guns coming from? We do not manufacture guns in Trinidad. Where are they coming from? And as Adasa indicated, until we relate to national border security and closing our borders and monitoring our borders, we will have the average citizen feeling exactly what I felt in that moment.
But that is a real reality. I'm sorry that you had to experience that, but yeah, that is the reality and the environment that has been created where at any moment you can be robbed, you can be relieved of your valuables, or they take your life, you know. And because I was telling you, but I try to be fair to everybody. When JW was appointed to the Senate, and I said I wanted to be
Right.
fair to him, so I made a point to find when he addressed the Senate on his maiden speech, and
Yes.
he went on and on and on to point fingers at the previous administration to say that they didn't do this and they canceled the OPVs, etc., etc., etc. And how, he's talking about what the government is doing now, and that they're going into the communities and they're rounding up all these guns and whatnot. And I'm like, but in no time did he talk about what his government is doing to secure the borders. And this is exactly what we're talking about. It is a puppy show, is an exchange. Nobody really seems to want to really fix the country and to deal with the issues. Which reminds me, we also wanted to talk about housing and the 500 applicants who,
Yes.
well, the way that Lou put it, and I had to chuckle, was 500 lucky applicants. All right. And basically, these people they're going to be called in for an interview. So they haven't actually gotten the house. This is just one part of the process, you know?
Right.
And first of all, I'm thinking, what is lucky about this? I know that there are people who are waiting for homes 18 years. They've submitted their paperwork, they have their down payment waiting, and they still up to this day, they can't get a house. And why is we insist on carrying on with a lottery system? That is no way for society to progress in terms of providing housing. What the government needs to do is to remove barriers to people being able to own their homes, and that is what I love about the Progressive Empowerment Party. Our ideas are so revolutionary. We are saying for first-time first owners, 0% no down payment for 30 years on your first home. This is going to make it possible for a lot of people. Once you have a job and you want to own a home, you can own a home. You have a right to that. You have a right to be able to provide a safe space for your children and your family. And what this government is doing is they're dangling bait, because the only time they talk about housing is right before elections. And I hate it. It is political baiting.
Exactly. Exactly. And we know the HDC. I'm so glad this was our next topic. The HDC is just a political tool. The only time we hear of house distribution is closer to elections. So as you've indicated, now we have this infamous lottery draw. What about the people that have been waiting over 20 years? What happened to their application? Why all of a sudden are we going with this lottery draw? Should it not be in order? But again, people, this has to do with governance. This has to do with proper governance. Do
Yes.
you think in anywhere of the world you can go and they've adapted a lottery system to basically overlook people that have applied 20 years ago, 20 plus years now, and now you're overlooking them and saying randomly, because I use the word random very loosely, Hadassah. And the reason I
Yes.
use it, because you and I know it is not random, right?
It's not.
We have, it's not random. So the past few days, almost every day this week and last week, there has been some promotion of HDC house distribution. I live in Deep South, and there is a community where houses, HDC homes, are rotting away, literally rotting away. I have taken pictures. The grass has overgrown the house. The rats have taken over. It's rotting away. But then last week we had the audacity. They had the audacity to say they're giving homes in South when they have the same said homes literally rotting away and citizens waiting 20 plus years. How fair can that be to the public? How fair can that? And this is governance. This is governance, paying an astronomical amount of rent when home ownership should be available to all. As Hadassah indicated, it should be available. The financing should be very clear and precise and fair to the average citizen. The banks should be regulated so that they don't have the opportunity to charge you a pound and a crown to finance a home. But again, we talk about this, and this is where that daily frustration comes in. Because imagine, Hadassah, you're paying rent, you're struggling to pay rent when you could be contributing to a home, right?
That you would own and it would be yours. And you could have that pride.
Right, right. And how
And
does we talk
that's why I
about,
keep saying it's. Sorry, go ahead.
we go.
No, I said that's why I have to keep coming back and saying that it's the way that we are being governed is actually really very cruel. I can't stress that enough. And they have people like puppets, right? And all you really need to do, and I keep saying this, to me, the easiest way to win an election is to govern well.
Right,
If in your 5-year term you make sure that education is where it's supposed to be and teachers are paid properly and infrastructure is maintained and banks are regulated, the borders are secure. If you just do what you're supposed to do, then you don't have to do all these parlor tricks and all this acrobatics when election time come to convince people why they need to vote for you. The fact that you have to do this is an indictment. The fact that you have to do this proves that you have failed. You haven't done what you were supposed to do. And it's sickening and it's maddening because there are people who out there who would say, "Oh, that's fine," you know,
right.
and they will defend
Yes.
sense, and then they wonder why their life is in a cycle.
Exactly. Well said, Hadas. And with the HDC homes, let's also point out that 80% of HDC homeowners are in default. Right now, that agency is sinking financially. 80% of their current homeowners cannot afford to pay for that said HDC house. So if you are telling the public the requirement is XYZ, and as you've indicated, the salary must be this and that, and all this paperwork, and you're up and you're down, and you're filling out application is, how is it that HDC applicants, homeowners, 80% are delinquents in their payments? And when we say
Defaulted on
delinquents,
the payment,
90,
yeah. Yeah, because again, after you get the house, there's no governance. There's nobody checking up on that, and we all know that the HEC is really just for racketeering. It doesn't
right,
really serve the purpose for which it was intended, for which it was created. Which is to provide homes, which I mean, at the core is a good initiative, but if you're not using the tool, if you're not using the mechanism to do what it was supposed to do, then we will always be in shambles, and then you wouldn't have to be taxing citizens so heavily for
Yes.
everything if you don't get your books in order, if you're not making sure that people are paying their rents or paying their mortgages, etc., etc. As you say, Michelle, it goes right back to governance. We need good governance.
Exactly. And and then another thing, another thought to think of with the HDC homes, how are these over 80% of their owners delinquent, which means from the get-go, these houses are dispersed to people that simply cannot afford the homes. Because we understand I would understand you're delinquent in the COVID-19 situation. You've been temporarily laid off, but this has been ongoing, Hadassah, for quite a number of decades. They are in the millions and millions of dollars to collect from these homeowners. But what we are trying to emphasize is that these homes are unfairly assigned as a political tool to their supporters, and therefore they
Yeah.
are given to people that cannot afford the home to start with. So think about it. You are deliberately setting up someone for failure, right? So you give this as a political tool, vote for me, vote for you, whatever. But the person is automatically set up to fail. I personally know persons that have been assigned the homes and and cannot afford the home. They were deliberately, basically, exchange for exchange, and they cannot afford the home. They were not permanently employed to begin with, so the home should not have been assigned to them because you are setting them up for deliberate
For
failure.
failure. Yes.
Right? You're
Yeah.
not governing properly because they're failing from the jump start. What were you gonna say?
No, the whole idea in Trinidad of low housing income is a joke because
Right.
the price of the homes really are out of reach for the average citizen, right?
Right.
So what the PEP is saying though is that we will give you a mortgage based on what you earn. And that is
Right.
where it should be, so that people don't have to worry about hanging their hats or not being able to pay or whatnot. But there's also no enforcement, Michelle, because
Yes.
if there was the fear of being evicted, and I'm not saying that we want people to lose their homes, but if there was the fear of being evicted, and if the government was making sure and sending people their letters and saying, that you're late, etc., etc., then people would try to make a greater effort. But I also know that there are people who live in these houses, like the older ones that are like on Duke Street, etc. They pay like
Mhm.
$125 a month, and they are late on those as well.
Right.
So
Right.
it really is, it's not always about the cost. Sometimes it's the mentality of the people. And
Right.
that probably, and I say, as a population, we really need to be retrained because we're very a lackadaisical bunch and whatnot. And
Right.
we really have to start from, every single individual.
Agreed 100%. And I mean, I think as you said, the kind of concept that the house is free. I mean, I've heard people refer to that as free, that the government will give you a house. And I always was very perplexed by it until I started deep diving into it in terms of the financing and the process and understanding it is a mortgage you are taking out. It's not. I actually had to
Yeah.
explain that to someone who, poor thing, I mean, really was clueless and oblivious to how it works. They really thought it was a free home that they were getting. So many people, it is safe to say, as you've indicated, many people go into those HDC homes with the mentality that it is a free home and I don't have to pay. And there's lack of enforcement, there's lack of accountability. You and I know, I mean, during this COVID-19 situation, all of my bills have come on time. I don't know about yours, but every one of my bills have come on time. So why can't the HDC function in that manner? My simple telephone bill, light bill, TN bill, WASA bill has come on time. Those are the only mail I have received in this COVID-19 situation. So why is it, as you've indicated, why is it that HDC is not efficient enough, not as proactive enough to be issuing letters? To indicate to the persons involved you are late. But now we've let it wait. I know a person personally who hasn't paid the home in years. Where will he get that money? That's the question. And people, what we are bringing to your attention is all stems down to governance, what we've been talking about today. It's all stems out to the root core of proper governance. Changing the faces is not going to change the governance because there's no policies, there's no procedures in place, there's no first world thinking in place. There's these bills should be auto generated. These are simple enforcements that should be seamless. But in Trinidad, everything seems to be an obstacle. And it does not have to be an obstacle. It should flow seamlessly, but instead we stagger and our citizens continue to be highly frustrated. So we are only going for an hour today because of the last minute scheduling. But Hadassah, I wanted to give you the opportunity to give us your closing remarks. We actually covered a lot in this hour. So I wanted to give
We
you
did,
your,
yes.
we sure did. So, I mean, again, it's been such a pleasure. But what is your closing comments and what would you say to the public?
Well, I really want to encourage people to break the abusive cycle and to not allow yourself to be a pawn in the government's political games. You know, you are worth more than that. You are valuable. And under the right government, you can reach your potential. And that is what we're saying. We have been under a government where people have been relegated to URP and CPEP jobs, to KFC jobs, to minimum wage, and they cannot really live, right? And do all the things that they want to do. And we are saying that there is a third option now, and better could be had. And the reason why we're in this state is because we have not held our leaders and our politicians, we haven't taken them to task and we haven't held them accountable. You know, but change has come, and I would really like you to think seriously about what you're going to do come September, because life has been hard in Trinidad up to this point, but it doesn't have to continue to be.
Agreed. Well said, Hadassah. I couldn't have said it better. At the Progressive Empowerment Party, we are a party of change, and we're putting our change in writing. We're not just telling you a story. We're not just bringing these issues to your attention, just to bring, we're making you think. We're making the public think. The public has had a rude awakening of what Philip Edward Alexander has brought to this nation and the dysfunctionality that we continue to face and the dysfunctionality that we continue to live in. We all should want better for our country. We all should want a better country. This is not about an individual movement. This is about a country movement of wanting better. We have brought issues to you this morning that the average citizen knows, can relate to. There are citizens stranded at home. There are parties that are going up for power again and again, and we are not seeing results. We are not seeing change. We have an unfair system of the HDC allotment that does not allow for the average citizen to get through in their lifetime. They might literally past their lifetime and they still have not received that infamous call from HCC. So people, we challenge you. We challenge you to think. We challenge you to ask us questions. Visit us at www.peptt.com. check out our policies, question us, volunteer, donate. All of this is available on the website for your information. If you are interested in helping us on the ground, walking with us and showing this country that we are about change, again, there is a volunteer option on our website. So again, please, we ask you and plead with you to just take a moment to think Trinidad and Tobago. We do deserve better. Adasa, thank you for the honor of having you this morning. It has been my absolute pleasure.
Oh no, the pleasure was all mine, Michelle. Great
Right.
talk.
And for the audience, we will see you on the next episode of Pep Talks in the Morning. Felicia will be happy to return. It was our pleasure to stand in for her, and we do hope she's having a nice and productive day. So good day, Trinidad and Tobago. Please stay healthy. Please stay safe. And until another Pep Talks in the Morning, we'll see you soon. Thank you.